Okay, I think we're going to make a start. So hello everybody and welcome to ideasSpace, your weekly Thursday excitement before the weekend. My name is Hannah Smart and I'm a director of Edge Urban Design. And today we're going to be talking about design value versus the value of design, a topic that I think we found in our work has very much has maybe changed recently. So perhaps people are valuing design and different elements of the way in which they live in a slightly different way. And I've invited today a number of people who to me have been really important in my career and have guided me up to this point. So my panel is a group of friends, but also some amazing people who really know their stuff. So I think what we'll do firstly is we will go over to the one and only, let me find my piece of paper, Neil. So Neil, we're talking about values, and the question I asked you was about strategic infrastructure and master planning, because that's a lot of the projects you get involved with are at that kind of very big strategic countrywide scale. And I'd love to know about the values that you think we should be placing on design in an urban setting. So may that be towns, cities, high streets, countries, continents. So over to you, Neil. You've got 3 minutes, and if you go over, I'll cut you off. I'm going to time you, so please go for it.
Okay, so here's a 3-minute romp through urban design. It seems to me that the core question that needs to be asked is one almost before design, which is what we want from our places. It's almost it's become a political question, a sort of community question about what do we actually want. I want to talk about 3 levels: cities, high streets, and where people live. For our cities, I think what I want is for the blood of connectivity, if you like, the life of the city to work really well. And I couldn't get my virtual background to work, but this is actually the Berlin Central Station, where you've probably got 8 modes of transport all together, all working and coordinated well together. And alongside that, you've got life, and you've got people watching. You've got the spectacle of being in a city. You've got the experience. You've got retail and food and activity. Now, I think if we're sort of serious about our new normal, I think we've got to get connectivity much better. So it's got to be integrated, coordinated, easy to use, and seamless. And that's the only way we're going to get our cities to work. Now, if I move on to high streets, one thing on high streets, and I think this is probably to do with variety. The first thing is it's evident that we need a variety of outdoor spaces, from the kind of loud big ones where I can listen to music perhaps, through to kind of smaller, maybe quieter, sort of maybe shadowed spaces where I can meditate. And I think, again, recent experience, particularly living in the city, has shown us that. Next thing is a variety of uses, that we want our high streets not to be effectively shopping centres. We want them to go back to being the centre of towns, to be multicultural places, places where people can see what's actually happening, where you've got people living and working and studying and learning. Very happy to see Boris say that empty shops can become living places again. And then finally, where I live, which is basically, you can see it in the backdrop. I want our houses that we live in to be long life and loose fit. This is an 1850 Victorian terrace. There's probably about 150 in my area. They're all different. They're all customized to their owners. They're all capable of further change as we all work at home or homeschool or whatever happens to us during the various days. And that goes on to my 3 qualities, which are basically saying that I'd like light. You can see light coming in from here. I'd like space, and I'd also like quiet, but not necessarily all at the same time. Thank you.
I think the prize firstly goes to Mr. Bennett for 2 minutes 48. Excellent. Actually, I do have a little prize which I didn't disclose, and Sarah might tell me off, but I've stolen some Prosecco from the Edge store, but there will be a prize for the best question or answer later on in the evening. So thank you very much, Neil. That's great. Okay, let's move on to Gary and see if Gary can compete with 2 minutes 48. Unlikely. Gary, over to you.
Okay, I'm answering the question, which Hannah was going to ask, but I'll ask it. The most important values for residential design in a rural setting. So I'm starting 3 minutes. I've got 5 answers to this. The first is high quality visual external design to integrate with natural surroundings, like an organically grown settlement. This requires material choices to reflect local context and adaptation of standard house types with attention to details. And some examples are high wall and roof to window ratio, including concealing part of the accommodation as roof-lit bathrooms. Reference to specific vernacular, e.g. sloping tile cat-slide roof. Adding surprise and variety through projecting bay windows, recessed to create planting ledges, for example. The second main value is creating living spaces for health and well-being, requiring all main rooms to have excellent daylight and views. Examples are key family space, commanding views to outdoor spaces, space for working from home, either a separate room indoors, a loft suitable for conversion, or attached or detached outdoor workspaces. Finally, covered cycle storage close to the main entrance, making cycling a first choice transport. The third value is climate change mitigation, which requires today's homes to avoid future anticipated overheating. This requires careful sizing of windows adapted to orientation, provision of windows with integral shading or capable of retrofit, higher ceilings to make effective use of natural ventilation. The fourth, we are in a climate emergency and housing must be lowest embodied carbon in construction and achieve zero carbon in use, in particular low fabric heat loss, innovative materials with lowest carbon emissions such as hempcrete, cement-free concrete, and organic insulation. Renewable electricity generated from photovoltaic roof panels. Finally, the fifth is reverse the loss of species by creating biodiversity net gain, conserving water and preventing nitrates entering watercourses. So amenity spaces and gardens should use site topsoil for creating wildflower meadows, roof eaves with bat and bird boxes and perforated bricks with bees and insects, gardens or allotments with space for vegetable growing and providing fresh food, green roofs with biodiverse planting. Water conservation measures must use fittings to maximize reduction in water use. Rainwater collection must use roof harvested water in water butts for landscape. And most importantly, site foul sewage treatment plants with reed beds must be used to achieve water nitrate neutrality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. That's great. 2 minutes 49, so you didn't quite beat Mr. Bennett there. The other question I wanted to ask you was about your background. So I've asked all of the panel members to share their background as something that they think is probably their favourite design. So Gary has put one of his own up there, I reckon. Gary?
So my background is, it's one of the, I've been, over lockdown, I've been doing it, aiming to do at least one sketch a week, maybe 2. This is a sketch of Regent's Park. It's one of my favourites. I just use it all the time and emphasise how important that is as an outdoor space in the current climate.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Gary. That's great. So we're now going to go to a poll. If one of my lovely assistants, Jacqueline, if you're there, could run the first poll question. So now everyone's heard a little bit about values and what's special to our panel members. We're going to ask you a question. First one. So as designers, planners, engineers, and everything else in between of places for people to live, what do we believe people value the most now and in the future? So if you could have a little read through the potential answers there. So is it the houses, the public realm, the location, or all of the above being inseparable? We'll reveal the answers at the end of the session. I'll just give you a few minutes. So whilst we're waiting, Howard, do you want to get yourself prepared? And after the poll's finished, we'll carry on.
Hey, hi there, it's Jacqueline. I'm just letting you know we're getting there. We've got 75% of people have voted. So I'm figuring we'll give them all another 10, 15 seconds and then close it out.
Perfect. Let's do that.
Yeah, perfect. So I could give everybody a countdown. 10.
Okay, let's do that.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm closing it out now at 89% participation. Thank you, everyone.
Jacqueline. Perfect. We'll come back and share the results later on. So, Howard.
My whole discipline is about getting people to see the combination between architecture and landscape. I do that in an educational environment and in professional capacity as well. And I've literally stepped out of one meeting to come into this, our end of year exam board, where we've looked at all the students' work. And one of the things that's really come out of that is the impact on the students working in an atmosphere where they've had all the norms taken away. And one of the things that's been fascinating is actually the exploration of how we look at a city, how we see and understand our streetscape and the context within which we're working. And I think one of the things that I think is crucial is understanding the sense of place wherever we're working. And I think that sense of place is bricks and mortar. It's about the landscape that we're working in. And I think the third strand of thought that I would also look at, absolutely inherently linked to all of this, is community, actually. All of these places are about the people who use them, and without remembering the users, we forget what we're designing, who we're designing for. And so I would always argue for a compassionate future, one where we're exploring not just the kind of low carbon futures, but also better social connections and social futures. I think as a practitioner, things that really I take away from or I bring to all of the work as my values for design, I think materiality of place. So again, whether that's the physical infrastructure of a new building or understanding the landscape and the biodiversity of that landscape, the topography of that landscape, are all critical to the way in which I work. And craftsmanship, I think the better crafted places that we work, that we build, the longer they last. And I think that's exemplified by what Neil was talking about with his Victorian house.
Thank you. That was excellent, very short and snappy. Can I ask you a quick question whilst you're on that? Craftsmanship, you are based up north, and I wonder do you think craftsmanship is something that is featured more often in the northern parts of the UK than say, for example, in London?
I think our biggest challenge here is people look at London magazines and go, I want one of those shiny bling things, and then we have to afford it on tuppence. So I count myself now as a good Yorkshireman, and we managed to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear up here, and that is down to the craftsmen that we use.
Perfect, thank you very much. And craftswomen? Craftspeople. Awesome. Thank you, Howard, that's great. So, Richard, Mr. Stacey, you're up next.
Thank you, Hannah.
So
and firstly, before you start my 3 minutes, can I say thank you for the inclusion on your panel this evening. As a ginger, I don't often get asked to appear on such things, so it is very much appreciated. And also, I think it is important that we have a multidiscipline approach. It's very important that we have conversations, transport planners and urban designers. Transport planning does not and cannot operate in a bubble. Sorry, Boris, to use one of your phrases. And yes, I am a transport planner. I am not a highway engineer.
Am I allowed to start my 3 minutes now?
Yeah, go on.
Before I do, I'd like to ask you about your background. Why have you chosen this as your favourite piece of design?
Why? Really, it combines my love of football and music. It's a Coventry City shirt, which was developed to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the formation of the two-tone label. I stress I am not a Coventry City fan at all. I don't like the team, but I think for me, the design, it's simple, it's very effective, and it's got a personal connection. My formative musical years, love two-tone, love what it stood for, and I think for Coventry to recognise their local cultural history is very, very, it's got to be celebrated, really. And I think it's also got relevance today. Two-tone was all about bringing together black and white, The musical influences, the culture and the fashion is a combination of ska, reggae, punk, new wave. So the black and white musical influences and diversity was key. And also in the last three and a half months, who hasn't heard Ghost Town by the Specials on the radio? And it takes on quite a new meaning.
Right, so you have 6 minutes, you're off now.
I've done my bit, thank you.
Yeah. Right, so tell us about some transport planning, Richard.
So, transport values. We are, or at least we should be working against two key agendas now, climate change, health and well-being. Both of those agendas really should be encouraging a shift towards active travel, of course. We are seeing a radical paradigm shift in transport planning now because of COVID-19, and the priority is really to capture the beneficial changes that have occurred in the last couple of months, and not just to make sure, not just a knee-jerk reaction, reducing travel and changing the mode of travel. I don't think there'll be any surprises what I'm going to say next. Movement and accessibility, very much key values, but it's deeper than that, isn't it? What type of movement? Who for and how? Accessibility to what? We need to implement the hierarchy of movement, provide a sense of place and reduce the dominance of the car in our design while still providing people with a credible choice. Movement corridors are important and they have to be high quality, direct, active, safe and have the space to separate out users. We shouldn't always take the easy and lazy option and group walking and cycling together. As user groups, they have different needs, different values and different expectations. Even walking covers a multitude of requirements, with and without kids and their erratic behaviour, pushing prams, the elderly with different speeds, some with carers, wheelchair users, and even romantics who want to walk hand in hand and side by side. We also need to embrace and cater for technology. Electric bikes are with us, electric scooters are coming very, very soon, and they have different requirements and conflict with other users. But also consider the quality of the environment we are moving around places. Green spaces, not always possible in urban areas, but TfL are doing a lot of work on pocket parks, providing space to rest whilst and break up your journey and something of interest. And connectivity is important. There is no point providing a cycle route that stops dead or does not connect with existing infrastructure. Public transport will still have a key role to play for mass movement over longer distances, but it's going to take a long time to recover. It's difficult enough to get people on a bus before COVID-19, and bus companies are suffering, really suffering now. So it's going to be a big challenge. But we cannot use this as an excuse to promote the car again. Having said that, is that what people really want? In the last couple of months, I've attended a couple of public consultations over during COVID. And all I'm asked about? Parking. And what am I doing to relieve congestion? I'm never asked about footpaths and cycle routes. And of course, reducing car dependency, car dominance to enable this will affect our streets and spaces. We can free up space for people. With less parking in residential areas and centres, just think how much space that provides for gardens, open space, public realm. The change in values can reduce the over-engineered solutions that we see so often. We can soften the landscape and improve the script there. Can't talk, don't count that as my 3 minutes, Hannah.
Well, your time's up already. So
okay, and improve the street scene, increase the ability to use streets as active spaces. Other values I think are important. Human values, we need to be brave, inventive, and to actually think. We need to be less prescriptive, less DB32, more flexibility on adoption, less risk adverse when it comes to innovation. And that's in 3.5 minutes, probably all I want to say. Thank you.
4 or 5, thank you. Thanks, Richard. Okay, if we could go over, Jacqueline, to another poll question, please, before we hear from Sarah. So, question number 2. Do you believe the development community should be offering a better product to the market? And if so, how? So, yes, we should be thinking big. Yes, we should be working together to improve the offer. No, this is a blip and the market will continue to act as it did before the pandemic. Or, no, it's too expensive to increase the design output and change the product. So we'll just give you 30 seconds on that one. Mr. Stacey, could you mute your microphone, please? Thank you.
Okay, Hannah, so I'm going to give everybody the 10-second countdown, and we've already got 75%. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Oh, we're good, 88%, 90, great stuff. Ending it now.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Okay, Sarah, my partner in crime, where are you?
Where in my background?
Well, yes, please tell me what's special about your background and why is it your favourite piece of design?
Okay, so slight error in your Barcelona quote earlier. I'm actually in Bilbao in Spain.
Of course.
And this is the Guggenheim in Bilbao by Frank Gehry. And I've chosen this because I've always been quite a fan of the work by Frank Gehry, largely because it actually sort of is very synonymous with the sort of the form and the style of his architecture is actually quite similar to the Danish designer George Jensen, who I also have quite a big passion for. And I just love the kind of the fluidity of the design and the sort of simplicity yet complexity that's sort of interwoven between the spaces that he creates. And I've always loved it, and actually I visited it as a treat from my mother when I graduated from my architecture degree, so it's always a place that I have fond memories of in a building that I enjoy looking at.
Thank you. So Sarah, the big question though, what do you think the most important values are that we should be placing on design from a master planning point of view?
I think that we're obviously currently in the times that we're in at the moment have made us all reflect upon how we might move forward. I think that it's all too often as designers, as other consultants and people within our industry, we take for granted what perhaps we all think and believe is good design and what we should be doing. And actually we too often perhaps forget about the users who ultimately will be the occupiers of the spaces that we're creating. Now, I think maybe we think about them, but we maybe don't fully appreciate what the ultimate outcomes are of what we're delivering for them. And I think what we have come to realise sort of today, really, because of the situation we've been placed in with the global pandemic, is that individuals are actually starting to analyse the places where they live and work and play and stay and so forth. And I think as individuals, they are starting to realise and value what is important to them, be that in their homes, in their communities, in the towns and cities that they might live in. And I think we need to start thinking a bit more and taking on board those viewpoints. So this poll that Hannah is running this evening is something that we are collectively in a sort of operating in a think tank with Mark from Area Planning and Richard Stacey actually from Evoke Transport, and we've run this poll with a number of our developer clients that we work with, and it'll be interesting to gauge how the kind of the poll results split, and it's something that we could do with the public as well. And because ultimately I think we probably have similar views in terms of what we should be doing moving forward, but also what does that mean in reality? We have all these great ideas for what our homes should look like, what our places should look like. But me coming from a sort of a personal view of being quite a realist and taking the big ideas and actually drilling them down into delivering them, how do we deliver them? We might say that we want bigger homes, but can we afford bigger homes? Will the developers that are going to build the bigger homes change their product because will there be demand for it? We currently want more outdoor space, but we have currently also had a lot of time on our hands, supposedly, to spend in those public spaces, or we haven't had gardens. So if we start delivering gardens for people, bigger gardens, more open space, will people utilise them when we return to a semblance of supposed normality? Who will manage those spaces? How will we continue to ensure that those spaces are maintained for the good of everyone and retains the quality? And I think quality is I think a driving force in all of this, and is topical, and I think the quality will allow us to hopefully make sure that our values in our places are delivered ultimately.
Thank you, Sarah, that's great. I I want to ask you also, what are your 3 top personal values for the place in which you live?
So mine are kind of all really interwoven, and I do believe that the values that we all place on our places where we live, it's very much dependent on our own sort of personal circumstances and life situations and family and children and so forth. And for me, I live in a lovely village, so the kind of village lifestyle is what I value hugely, because I have access to facilities that I can walk to. I have friends and a community that I can really engage with, and I think the current situation has really exacerbated that even more so, the kind of community spirit, which I think is so important. Also being close to my family. I have 2 young children, so equaled with the whole family situation is being close to schools, because obviously they are a huge part of my life, and that is what I have to focus on a daily basis. And okay, it's not 3, so kind of a 4th / extension to a 3rd is being close to my work. Hannah and I, setting up Edge, obviously made sure that we wanted to have that work-life balance, and it's something that we are trying to drive within our team, the kind of that balance, and the fact that I can work from home and close to home in our office makes a huge difference to me. So those are my top values.
Thank you very much. Just whilst Sarah's here, I did say that I would give a prize out to the best questions. Sarah will be monitoring the questions in the chat box. So if you want a bottle of Prosecco, Sarah's the one that you need to impress. So just to remind you, got a lovely bottle of Prosecco here. And I'm really sorry, Sarah, but also the coveted Edge trophy, which there's only one of these in existence. And it's a pretty hard thing to get hold of. So think about some good questions for after the session. Okay, let's go to Mr. Russell Jarvis of Jarvis Homes. Hello, Russell.
Oh, hello.
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 Hiya. Go for it. So tell us about your background first.
Backgrounds. Okay. Well, behind me is the Cutter's Ark, but more importantly, Grimshaw's treatment of what they did to after the fire, which is to place it on this fantastic glass dome to make it look like it's ploughing through the water, and at the same time, it's a perfect form and function. It's holding the boat up, and underneath is a superb public open space and realm where the copper hull of the boat is the roof of the space, and that was my favourite my favourite background. But it was eclipsed by this week, and this is the Mercedes-AMG Petronas 2020 Formula 1 car that will be racing this weekend. It's the Silver Arrow, but it is not in the silver anymore. It is in an exquisite all black colour for the rest of the season to support Black Lives Matter. And of course, the driver is Lewis Hamilton, probably the greatest driver that's ever lived. And a reminder that when we are diverse, we are better. And because we are in the design and construction industry, we have a part to play in designing better and more diverse places.
Awesome. I think I'm going to disagree with you there and say that Michael Schumacher is the best driver that's ever lived, but we can talk about that later.
You can talk about that later.
And I think my brother may be on the call, and he works for Mercedes, so he'll be very pleased to see your choice of design there. So tell us about house building beautiful homes. Well,
it's interesting. Tonight we're hearing space. And I think one of the things we ought to be challenging, maybe not everybody agrees, but we ought to be challenging that the planning-led system that's driven us down the large-scale development route. I'm more in tune with people needing space to thrive, and I think that the recent pandemic has only shown that to be the case. So I'd be looking forward to much more organic growth, especially in the rural villages and the countryside. We've had 150 in the last 150 years. The UK population has doubled, and yet most census records show that the villages haven't changed at all in that period. And too often I see badly designed stuff placed in between, railways and motorways and things for human beings, which are totally inappropriate. I know that we need to protect our countryside, but very often we can increase the biodiversity in the countryside, especially when you're building on places that have been ecologically deserted through chemicals and pesticides. A recent Ipsos Mori poll showed that only 0.1% of the UK is densely built up, which is interesting. But I am a country person myself, and I'm aware that we need to protect the countryside. But I think that with thought out and sensitive design, we can build organically in the villages and some of the countryside without a detrimental impact. Recently, I was in, before the lockdown, I was in Norway and discovered why they really are the connoisseurs of exterior lighting, because they do manage to, to light the place up effectively without any real pollution to the wider night skies. And the technology's there to build locally. We don't necessarily need to plug into these huge pieces of infrastructure anymore. We have got personal and household water treatment plants and the such like. And I think the pandemic will see a seismic shift to localism rather than globalism. I think people will start moving out to the countryside a little bit more. So we do have to think about how we do that. I think that working from home is obviously going to become much, much, much more important. We're on a Zoom call now. Everybody has proven that Zoom and the such like work. And so I think that people will be doing a lot more of that. High-speed broadband is therefore a must. In terms of the houses themselves, because of this, we've seen a dramatic shift towards open space design so that people can create different living zones within those spaces. And these living zones may adapt over time according to how a family's needs might adapt. Playrooms might become offices, and interior decoration can separate formal areas from informal areas. Health-wise, we see people getting very savvy about health issues. We're designing out plastics, such as UPVC windows, and replacing them with timber and aluminium composites. We don't use VOC paints anymore. As far as the gardens are concerned, Sarah's right. I think people want gardens these days. They're becoming more and more important. People are using them more and using them for more things. And also, I think that those gardens and the space around the house, going back to, I think it was Neil, they should provide flexibility for the house so that those houses can be adapted and maybe even extended quite easily. And we should be designing houses that can be extended quite easily. So I think in summary, the two things, and I think this has been a theme running all the way through, are space and flexibility. Everybody wants a bit more space now, and I don't think it matters if we build on just a little bit more of England or the UK, and I think that we need to be flexible in how we design so that we can future-proof things. And I think Lord Corbusier described a house best as being a machine for living in, and that's what they should be.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Although you've gone a minute over, so I think, well, our fees are going to have to go up a little bit to take account of that.
That's okay.
Can you just tell us what your top 3 personal values are?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they're very similar to Sarah's. As I say, I'm a country person, so a rural location is extremely important to me. But I want to live near to work, or even be able to work from home. And I want space for family life, and it reflects what I earlier said, which is, and we're hearing all the way through that it does seem to be that space is a key requirement now, or on everybody's wish list.
Yeah, thank you very much, Russ. That's great. So, Jacqueline, could we have the third and final question, please, for the poll? So, question 3, what is the biggest barrier to development and improving the quality of design? Is the biggest barrier land values? Is it the cost of moving away from a one-size-fits-all type? Is it our clients and buyers who are not sufficiently interested to warrant additional design cost? Or is it competing planning forces such as highway requirements, architectural design, etc.? Or is it planning itself? That's one that's not on there. You can see, by the way, there's some great questions coming in the chat box. So clearly the bribery worked. Everyone wants to get their hands on the little Edge trophy.
So, Hannah, we've got 75%. Oh, actually, people are really engaging with this one. So I'm going to give a few more seconds and see if we can get ourselves over 79. Somebody vote, and then I'll shut it down. Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now.
Thank you very much. Okay, then on to, last but not least, Mark Schmull of Arrow Planning, who's going to hopefully recap in his wonderful role as a planner.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. Do you want to ask about my background as well before we start?
Please tell me about your background.
Yeah. Well, I was going to follow Russell's lead and actually have two backgrounds, so I'll come to this one in a second. My first choice was actually this one, which Richard Stacey will particularly appreciate, because what he failed to mention is that he's an Everton fan. And this is Anfield, the home of Liverpool, the new Premier League champions, who are playing tonight in their first game as champions. And there's a whole story about the design and how they managed to keep the history there and the importance of the community by expanding the stadium there. But actually, I thought, rather than upset Richard tonight, I would stick with the classic Porsche 911, which, as a boy growing up, it's always been my favourite car, and it's my ambition to have one, ideally a Carrera RS like this one day. But the key thing for me from design is they got it right first time. And if you look at a Porsche when first designed and you look at them now, they're pretty much the same. It's evolved and it's changed, but effectively the same. And that's, you know, there's a big lesson to be learnt from that, is if it's not broken, don't fix it. Yes, evolve and adapt, but don't keep trying to reinvent the wheel and kind of keep redoing things just for the sake of it. And I think sometimes in development, we do keep trying to do that, particularly to keep up with latest trends and so on, when actually a lot of the fundamental principles in the planning system and design and so on that go back 50, 100, 1,000 years even, are still really relevant and really robust, and we should be sticking to today.
I think that's actually a really good point, and you should maybe be an honorary member of the Urban Design Group for that one, because it just, you know, it shows the point of having a master plan in the first place, but it's not necessarily the design itself, but it's about the principles that we set out and getting those right at the outset, and then things can flow from there. So, planning.
Yep. So, planning, 3 minutes. Well, thank you. I've got the sort of task of trying to sum up what's been said, and actually I've got 3 points that I've made before today, and what's been really encouraging is actually listening to the rest of the panel today. Pretty much everything I've got written down has come up in one form or another from what everybody said, so actually it makes my life a lot easier summing up, but it shows from a planning perspective how important it all is. The sort of key themes I've really picked on, and these particularly came out with sort of Gary and Howard, is things like getting the community on board. And by that, I mean, if you want to actually deliver planning and get a planning permission, one of the key things is actually, let's get the community on board, let's get them excited, enthused. As Sarah said, it's people who's going to live in these places, but it's also about the people who are going to live next door to them as well. If we want to deliver it, we want to get the new community to integrate with the old community. But ultimately, if you want to get a planning permission, chances are it's going to go to committee, it's going to be voted by members. So how do we do that? Well, it's good design, it's good quality public realm, it's the design of the housing and some of the details, as was said earlier. So I think that's really crucial to get that acceptance from the local community. Aligned with that then is actually delivery as well. And Sarah sort of touched on about the practical aspects of delivery, but we've got to make sure when we have these ideas and what we set out to do, we are actually then delivering them. Because again, we all know about sites and developments where we've had grand ideas, or other people have had grand ideas, and then what's actually come forward doesn't reflect that at all. And again, the local community, they say, well, you made all those empty promises and we haven't seen that. So again, how do you then turn these barriers, these concerns into opportunity? Well, it's by delivering what we've done, and through doing that, we've got to be realistic with our clients in terms of what we're actually trying to achieve. The sort of final point that I picked up on, and again, sort of picking up from sort of Neil and Richard actually, was about this sort of issue of movement. I would sort of take a contrary view to what Richard said about less parking. The reason for that is I do remember the sort of mid-2000s when the government tried to encourage have fewer parking spaces in front of houses and so on, and people will buy fewer cars. Well, we've seen that it doesn't work. People just park on the road. We've got to provide actually the opportunities to walk, to cycle in much more accessible ways, so that yes, people might still want to own the car, but their preference is going to be leave the car on the driveway and get on the bike and cycle to school, cycle to work, cycle to the shops, have the facilities at the offices, the places of work to securely store the bike in the high streets and so on. And then people will choose not to use the car rather than because they haven't got the space to have the car. Just the final quick point is actually just something that's sort of come out of what Russell sort of said now, and it is just this conflict between space and sprawl. We've all said we want to have more open space, we want to have nicer areas, we want to have nicer, homes with nicer gardens and so on. But at the same point, and as we've heard from the government just this week, focus on brownfield land, town centre redevelopment and so on. There's a big conflict there. And I agree completely with what Russell said. There is the space to grow, but politically, the view is you shall not touch the countryside, the green belt, or anything like that. You will build in urban environments. So how do we actually overcome that and take people on that journey with us?
Amazing, thank you very much. And how about your own 3 personal values, Mark?
So my 3 personal values are village life. Again, sort of some of the reasons have come out of what Russell and Sarah have said today. Footpaths and cycleways, and picking up on the themes I've just said, that ability to get about and not be reliant on the car. And the last one, which I really begrudgingly put down, but being openly and honest, was fast internet. The last 3 months wouldn't be able to run my business, let my children see their grandparents, attend events like this without fast internet, unless I got in the car and drove somewhere and connected to it in the office or somewhere. Yeah,
that's great. And it's not a bad thing to want fast internet. You wouldn't be able to get your pictures of Porsches, would you?
Well, that's true.
Thank you very much, Mark. That's great. So if you could just bring up the poll results, and hopefully Mr. Richard Stacey can help with his Les Dennis impersonation and get people to answer the questions about which question was the most popular. Maybe, actually, Jacqueline, can we show the questions again without the answers? Is that possible?
I am not sure. Do you know what I'm going to do? I've got question number 1 up. I've got the option to share results, and what I'm hoping is it'll give you. I haven't tested on this. I know if I relaunch the poll, you're going to lose all your answers. So we'll try this and see what happens. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
There you go.
Okay. I'll tell you what we'll do is, Richard, do you want to just wing it on this one?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. I'm actually really excited tonight. I mean, you've mentioned a bottle of fizz, but I've got some great prizes to give away. So much better than a small bottle and a little trophy. We'll go through the poll results in a second, but just to let you know what the prizes are. I've got a black and white portable television. I've got a music centre, a video recorder, VHS of course, a Teasmade, just for Sarah, especially for you, Sarah, a dinner service, a set of encyclopedias, a crate of non-alcoholic wine, and tonight's top prize is a speedboat. So,
that's amazing. Who donated all of these prizes?
They've come from me personally, Hannah. A great expense to our company.
So kind of you. Thank you so much. So what we were going to do was ask people what they thought the top answers were. But clearly we can't do that for question 1. So do you want to just summarise question 1, and I will read the questions for question 2 before we reveal the results?
Yes, certainly. The first question, we did ask almost 100 people, developers, planners, designers and engineers, of places to live, what do we believe people value most now and into the future? And of course, we've got the top 4 answers. And for this one, I was going to offer the black and white TV, portable, of course. But clearly the answers have already been revealed.
Question 2 was, do you believe the development community should be offering a better product to the market, and if so, how? So our options were, number 1, yes, we should be thinking big. Number 2, we should be working together to improve the offer. Number 3, yeah, this is a blip and the market will continue to act as it did before. Or number 4, no, it's too expensive to increase the design output. So Richard, would you like to go to the audience and ask their opinion?
I certainly would, Hannah. Once again, we asked 100 people, almost, and I'm looking for the top 4 answers on the board. Just looking at my screen.
Would you like me to nominate somebody?
Yeah, because I don't have anyone on my screen.
Okay. I'm going to nominate Rob Stewart.
Rob, excellent. Okay, Rob, over to you. Can you get the top answer from those options, please?
Shall I just say them again? So, yes, we should be thinking big. Yes, we should be working together to improve the offer. No, this is a blip. Or no, it's too expensive to increase design output.
Well, I went with yes, we should be thinking big. But I'm not sure my answer was really related to the current situation. I think we should just be thinking big anyway.
Awesome.
In terms of is this just a blip in design? The development world's quite a capitalist place, so I think if it had the opportunity to just return to where it was, it may well do so. But I think we should be thinking big. That was my answer.
Okay, and Richard, what? Oh, there you go.
That, Rob, signifies that you got the top answer. 52% said yes, we should be thinking big and create a step change. Rob, do you want to play or pass? Do you want to get the second answer?
I'll play. I am going to have to plug in as well. Hold on.
Richard, can you just confirm what Rob has won for the first prize?
I'm afraid, Rob, I've had to give away my VHS video recorder.
That's not the end of the world. I don't have any videos to put in it.
Rob, you ask a lot. I haven't got any videos, sorry. I think eBay will assist with that, I think.
Sorry, I'm plugging in. I'm going to
push you, Rob. I'm going to have to push you.
Oh, sorry. You need to push me forward. Sorry, what?
Well, the second answer, Rob.
Second answer. Now I've lost my concentration.
Second answer, was it? We should be working together to improve the offer. No, this is a blip. Or no, it's too expensive.
I think the second. Oh, no, it's too expensive would be the second. I'm going to be cynical the second time round.
Rob. I'm so glad you said that. Gave me an opportunity to use the wrong answer button. Unfortunately, Rob, you've given up your video recorder. The correct second answer is yes, we should be working together to improve the offer of the product. And that was 48%, just behind the top answer. So for those of you who are good at maths, that does mean that no one said it's a blip or it's expensive. 0%.
And there's the answers. Thank you, Jacqueline. Okay, so should we move on to the third question? What is the biggest barrier to improving quality of design of development? Is it land values, the cost of moving away from one size fits all, our clients and buyers not sufficiently interested to warrant an additional design cost, or competing planning forces? And I think, Richard, if you'd like to go to Mr. Adrian Clark.
Adrian, good evening. Adrian, I'm pleased to say that you're going to be playing for a dinner service. It's top quality bone china, so it's worth winning. And actually, as the final question, we're also playing for double money. So you have a really, really good chance to make a mark on this game. So, do you want to say, of the top 4 answers, do you want to say what the top answer is, please?
Yeah, sorry, just remind me what the question was again.
So, the question was, what is the biggest barrier to improving the quality of design of development? Is it A, land value squeezing profit margins? Is it B, the cost of moving away from a one-size-fits-all standard approach? Is it C, our clients and buyers not sufficiently interested to warrant an additional design cost? Or D, competing planning forces?
Yeah, it's a shame there's no all of the above option, but I think standard approach or the cost of moving away. from a standard approach, however that is defined.
So you said option B, the cost of moving away from a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
Adrian, I have to say, if that's up there, I'll give you the money myself. So anyway, you said option B. Our survey said.
Oh dear. I'm disappointed.
You've lost the dinner service. Anna, do you want to nominate someone else, or do you want to go straight to the answers?
No, we're going to nominate Hugh Blaser next.
Hugh, for this, I can't offer the dinner service. I'm afraid I've dropped it in rage at such a disappointing answer. But Hugh, you can play for the set of encyclopedias.
There's a joke about encyclopedias, but I better not tell it in this company. My choice was that there's not enough interest.
Okay, Richard?
Sorry, Hugh. Sorry. Close. That's the second answer. So unfortunately, I get to keep the encyclopedias as well.
Lucky you.
I'm up to volume 12 already. Hannah,
Yes.
do you want to nominate someone else or go straight to the final answer?
I'd like to nominate Mina, please. And she's got a lovely brick wall behind her with flowers on it.
Okay, Lena?
Thank you. It's fake.
Oh.
I would say the conflict between the planning and highways one.
You said that. Our survey said I can't open my phone with the app to give you the noise. So unfortunately, technology's let me down. But I'm pleased to say that you've won a music centre because that was the top answer. So Mina, congratulations. I can't even talk. Congratulations. As you're the final person, there's only one more answer to get. So I'm also going to award you the top prize of the speedboat as well. So
Why? Where would I put it in Oxford?
I'm sorry, Mina, that's not my problem. I'm sorry. I'm sure there's some good lakes and canals you can use it on. Slowly, of course, Mina. So congratulations, and sorry that I couldn't give you the correct answer buzzer. Oh, here we go. Finally. So yeah, it's a very tight on question 3. D, competing planning forces, highway requirements versus architectural design. There you go, 28%, but very, very close. So no clear winner on that one. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Richard, aka Les Dennis II. That's great. Thank you to all of the panel as well for joining us. It's been great to have you there, and I think there's some questions that people would like to ask. So, Sarah, do you want to pick a question from the Google Drive for us?
Would you like me to ask the question?
I would like you to ask it, yes.
Okay. So, on the basis that quite a few of us on the panel talked about the idea of valuing sort of village lifestyle as one of our main values, there is a question here from Martina Jivara asking, do people in the countryside want to become suburbs of cities, or villages have a life of their own worth protecting?
Okay, and do you want to ask any particular panel member that question?
Do I? I will ask Gary, seeing as you were on the rural discussion to start with.
Okay, it's Gary here. I would say that people who want to move into rural areas would want to have a village, organic and extensive open space character to where they live, but with, I would imagine, facilities close by. But that's how I suppose I would set my ambition if I was asked to create such an environment. But of course, you would obviously want to ask them first.
Okay. So I'm going to pick another question from Dorothy Wigington. So Dorothy asks, it seems to me that houses are designed for the housing market. Could they be designed for people instead? And I think, Russell, if you're able to take that one, it would be good to have your view on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I think there's a bit of a gap between what we do and what the major national builders do, which is build a house type time and time again to try and increase their profit margins. We don't. We try to build houses that are vernacular and are appropriate for their setting and for the demographic that's going to move into it. I'm concerned that, interesting, coming back to that last planning question, that planning conflicts are only just, but nevertheless seen as one of the biggest barriers. They certainly are. And one of the problems that we face all the time is not being able to build what we want to build because we're curtailed by one of the myriad of statutory consultees that we have to consult with through the planning process. But one of the problems of that, the net result of that, is that SME builders like ourselves, there's 85% of us have gone in the last 10 years. If we're not very, very careful and we don't start looking at the whole planning system as a whole, we're only going to be left with the big house builders, and that would just be an absolute tragedy, because no matter what they say, I don't believe they really do care as much as they say they do. So yes, I certainly think we should be building houses for people and for the locale in a vernacular way, or even in a in a more contemporary way, befitting of that village. And just going back to the earlier question, I don't think that villages do want to expand into metropolises. But as I said, they haven't really expanded at all in the last 150 years. And I think a little bit of organic growth. I mean, it's interesting that I know Farrells did some Gary Farrells did some work on this, where you stick 50 houses in a small village, but you can tuck them away in various places, and you'd never really even know that village has grown. But it grows just enough to keep the local pub and to keep the local shop and to keep the local school open. Because I've seen time and time again these villages die because they just can't support the local economy. And this is the time to do it, because, as I said, this I think is the time for localism more than any other.
Russell, just off the back of the first point of your question, which is great, people like Urban and Civic obviously are looking at much kind of bigger schemes where they're putting in the infrastructure first, and they also like to explore working with smaller, more bespoke house builders. Do you think that's something that could be taken forward and help to solve the problem?
Yeah, I do. As I said, I think there's the technology is there that we don't have to have this enormous infrastructure to plug into. Obviously, it's better and there's an economy of scale, and that's why these great big plan-led systems are going ahead. But I think that there's a side by side with that, we can be looking at smaller schemes, and they are getting more cost effective to build because technology is there to do it. So I think we should be exploring both. But what concerns me is at the moment we're very heavily going down the plan-led system, which is squeezing out the SME builders like ourselves. But the planning system is so risky that you've only got a 50% chance of getting a planning consent half the time these days, and it's just becoming too risky for smaller builders. So
maybe you're not using the right planning consultant, Russ. Maybe we should ask Mark Schmull what he thinks.
I'd love to hear what he thinks. I'd love to pay him his fee so he can get him his Porsche.
That would be great. No, funny enough, I was going to jump in with the point about risk actually before you got there, because I think that's one of the key barriers for the small, the SME house builders. It's the risks both in the planning system, like you say, to actually achieve a permission. If you get a refusal, a big PLC can absorb the costs of that, whereas an SME, they need to get it right sort of 9 times out of 10 really to be successful long term. But I think it's also then the actual design. I've got a client who's in Bedfordshire who has who's an SME builder, and he's done a scheme next door to a major PLC, and they took the risk of doing higher quality design, higher quality finish, materials, detailing and so on, knowing that their product will be stood next to this PLC at a higher cost. And they had a big intake of breath to see, right, if we do this, are we going to be left with lots of empty houses here because everyone can go and buy the one next door, have the same local environment with the outlook on the fields and so on, but sort of a bit of a less high quality product, but for quite a bit cheaper. But what they've actually found is that they've sold really well. I don't know whether people preferred their site to the PLC next door, but people have voted with their feet and with their wallets. So that's fantastic, but that's also been in a booming time. We're now in quite uncertain times. So again, it's just another pressure on the SME to actually, do you want to take that risk, or actually do you play the safe route of let's just go with what we know will sell, and just sort of carry on down there. And I think, I picked up one of the questions in there, which I think actually was from Karen again, about, the big companies, they don't want to change. They're not interested in changing what they offer. That is true. I think actually what they're interested in is their profit margins and their bottom lines. So actually, if the general public tells them that they need to change what they're offering, be that by what they're buying or other means, then the big companies will be forced to change. They won't have a choice.
Thank you, Mark. That's great. I'm just going to go back.
Can I pick some questions, Hannah?
You can, but I've got a couple in mind, and I just want to say that we're running out of time. We've run over time already, so I was just going to do 2 more questions. So, Sarah, if you do one now, and I'll ask the last question.
Okay, I'm going to ask this question from Mina, because she clearly wants the answer, because she's asked it 3 times. What role do shared private gardens behind private rear gardens, for example, the Ginnells at Goldsmith Street, play for the future of designing for social connections in housing developments? And I think Gary would like to answer that question.
Could we also hear from Howard on that as well?
I was going to suggest.
Howard can go first if you want.
No, you go first, Gary. Go for it.
Very good question, and it's very high on our interest and importance in, and even more important since the COVID pandemic, where shared space, which is close to private space, is incredibly important, and creating this threshold where you can enjoy outdoor space but not feel as though you're secluded. And I think Goldsmiths is a very good example where we're promoting. And I think if there's one thing that will come out of this, which is the push towards more social rented housing, I think we should be introducing these shared gardens. And I think it's really important because it's enabling us to create, there's an issue with setting out privacy distances under conventional rules. And if you have a shared space, you can sort of call it a cycling stroke garden street, which means you can create more compact block plans. So all those things add together, saying it's a very valuable thing, because I think it adds to access to gardens for cycling. Park your bike in the private garden, access it through the shed. So there's a lot of good things to come out of this. Thank you for asking the question.
Can we throw that over to Howard now? So Howard, from your point of view, with the integration of architecture and landscape, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I very much support Gary's answer there. I think one of the things that I think is a huge benefit to the idea of a shared space is that you can actually be more ambitious about kind of whole site systems in terms of dealing with rainwater mitigation. I think there's also that kind of social cohesion. And I think, particularly one of the things that we've noticed in the street that I live on up here is that with the absence of cars, all of a sudden the neighbours who are otherwise shut behind their houses, shut behind their front gates, all of a sudden the street has become a social space where we can gather, and every weekend at 4 o'clock we all go out, rain or shine, and we all say hello to each other. And it's been one of the kind of saving graces. And actually having that car-free space, we've all got our individual garden, but actually the street has become the thing that has provided the social cohesion. And I think when you consider that and add to that the ecological benefits that you can get from shared space, it's kind of a no-brainer. And I think actually we need to be, I think the planning system, the legislative system actually needs to wake up and get with where we're at as designers.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Howard.
Anna, can I just quickly jump in with just one point on that? Just one thing that's not come up at all today when we're talking community and design is older living. And a discussion I was in recently with someone else is that they said on this issue of communal gardens and shared space, a lot of what they're looking at for older living design, so care homes but others as well, is this shared space between younger generations and older generations to foster that community. And it's having a really, really positive impact for those who are living in the older living accommodation. And it's just something, again, I think we need to think about when designing these spaces, to not just, for example, have a care facility and that's sort of got its own space, and then there might be a student accommodation or even with social housing, they use the example of they create a real community if they're interlinked and intermixed, particularly with a shared space.
I think that's great, thank you, Mark, and actually links really well to what I was going to ask next. And we've got a question in the chat, which is, if retail, at least in its current guise, is deserting the high street, can we not repurpose the buildings left behind for living? Is this not how we will revive city centres? And I think that kind of, to Neil, of course, the high street expert, but there's an interesting question there about using private space, in residential areas, and then how would we then use public space in high streets and town centres and in between?
Okay, well, I think that the first thing is, my understanding is that our Prime Minister has approved the planning permission free conversion of empty shop units into dwellings, which I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I'd quite like the planning system to step back a bit from our high streets and actually deal with amenity issues, but not much else. I mean, maybe that's a provocative thing to say, but there's no doubt that our high streets now need to change, and sort of fairly quickly, and for those empty spaces to become, I'd prefer ground floor spaces in high streets to become working spaces, architects' offices, perhaps innovation spaces, and then the spaces above them to become residential. Not always very easy to do, particularly when you've got a shop unit which is spread over the entire ground floor, and you end up with some very awkward spaces at the back. But I think this multicultural approach to town centres and to high streets has to be the way forward. And the other thing I would urge is that we can't rely on central government, we can't rely on the kind of private sector. Somebody has to step forward and lead that. And I think every local high street needs a champion or champions to kind of lead these things and just get everybody together. I think we all know the examples where that's happened in one form or other, but very strongly support. Let's use that empty space for something else. And just finally, I'd say that Grimsby points out the example of a place in Belgium where they've actually actively taken measures to say to retail landlords, if you don't do something with that space in the year, you're going to get quadruple business rates. So, and here, by the way, is somebody who wants to use that space. So you can get councils working actively to kind of change spaces and to make retail landlords, often very small, realise that they're not going to get the rents that they used to get, and that changes in the air.
Thank you very much, Neil. We do need to wrap up. So just from each member of the panel, one sentence. What do you think of Boris's build, build, build? Neil, start with you.
In theory, I think it's great if we make a political statement. I suspect the money was already there in the first place, but anyway.
Thank you. Gary?
I think that the real focus should be on the qualities, a long list of which I've produced, being part of the build. Just building the business as usual will not be good enough. We need a higher quality, we need to hit environmental targets. The next crisis is coming and we need to address that in building.
Thank you. Howard?
I think it's utterly disappointing. I just think the lack of ambition in what they have instructed is appalling. I think we should be building homes that are the best quality that we can afford and with the best tech. And that should be what's driving this next build. And the Green Deal as was spouted about. And unfortunately, that's just been missed entirely.
Thank you, Howard. Richard?
A political broadcast, probably lies like everything else that he spouts, aim to protect the red wall voters. We'll see a lot of that over the next 4 years. And dare I say, the Conservative government often revert to road building and see road building as no pun intended, the road to economic prosperity. They've got to change.
Thank you, Richard. Russell?
Yeah, I mean, you might think that as a house builder, I'm saying yes, 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 but you know, I'm saying whoa, 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 as much as anything. You know, I don't want this to be an agenda to go and build a load of old rubbish. It's, you know, we have got to make sure that we are building proper places for people to live in.
Thank you, Russ. That's great. And Mark?
Yeah, I think, you know, as Howard said, the point's been missed completely. Build, great, yep, speed things up, brilliant. But saying that we've got newt counting delays and the like just highlights the focus is in the wrong area. And I'm hugely concerned we're going to end up with more bad quality design like we've seen from office to resi PDR conversions with this focus on PD development.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And Sarah, last but not least, I'd like to ask you the same, but I'd also like you to give us the winner of the best question.
Okay. So in terms of my response first, I think that ultimately we run the risk of all these things, lots of talk but no action, and we need to be looking to making positive change, you know, straight away and not just wait for what the government next decides to do and propose. That we should be working together and hope that some government backing actually happens along the line.
Okay,
so, question.
Don't forget, the person with the best question wins not only the Prosecco, but also the Edge Trophy.
Can it be a best question that we haven't actually read out?
If you want to, as long as it's a good one. I mean, if we haven't read it out, we probably should have done. If it's the best. I
was gonna pose it to you as a closing question. To be fair.
Go on then.
So, because I would like to hear your view on it, and I just think it's quite a fun question ultimately. It's from Richard James. Do we all see that urban design is a super discipline?
So I read that question, and absolutely, urban design is a super discipline. And I don't know whether Richard is still here, because I was actually quite interested to know how exactly he determined a super discipline. Of course it's a super discipline, but I wonder whether there's a little bit more technology behind it than me saying, yes, urban design is amazing, because all of us on the call would advocate that. So if he's still here.
I'm sorry, I've got my children running around in the background.
Hi, Richard. Hiya, how are you doing?
Yeah, my children have got 3 Porsches, but they're only that big.
Have you got a toaster and a tease mate?
I do as well, yeah, and a Betamax video player.
So would you just like to explain the background to your question? Because I just figure it may...
Yeah, it came out when I was doing my PhD, because my initial background was real estate, finance and development, and then I retrained in urban design, and you kind of see this bridge between it. I mean, I don't know if it's an Urban Design Group website, but it kind of filters in. You have to know about engineering, planning, infrastructure, social sciences, politics, and they're all interconnected. And that's kind of the way the map kind of moves as you're speaking to people. So each project's different, but it brings it together because you know, if you're trained in that way, you have to know about the system of buildings and people. And that's what I kind of see it as a super discipline.
I think you're right, and that probably reflects the fact that today we've got a panel of experts from lots of different backgrounds, because actually, I mean, definitely we can't do our job without all of the consultants and our friends that feed into the work we do. And certainly urban design isn't just one thing. I think if you asked a poll of 100 people, Mr. Stacey, what is urban design, I think actually you probably get 100 different answers, because urban design is so all-encompassing. So I'm not sure that we actually have the answer, but definitely urban design is a super discipline and super in my eyes. And maybe this is something we should carry on debating after the kind of formal session. Otherwise, I'm going to be shot by Jacqueline. So I'd just like to thank everybody for their amazing questions and for appearing on the panel. It's been great to have you, and it's great to kind of be surrounded by friends that we work with all the time as well, to be able to have a kind of more informative and open chat. So thank you to everybody, and I'm sure we'll look forward to seeing everybody at the next urban design session, which I hope is next week, Jacqueline.